Hi, this is Paul Casey, the Kenpo Karate Hall of Fame Zoom meeting. Today we're going to be talking about master keys and unraveling the mystery as well as exploring Ed Parker's thoughts on this. Is it martial science or is it Kenpo Voodoo? We'll let you decide. Thank you. When I was there in Pasadena, we would Friday night, Lee, I know you were there for those things. Roger would run the class or Yosh, and generally a little calisthenics and all that stuff. And then we would go and do the techniques out of 4 because we sort of knew what was going to happen because he'd call them. Later on with Frank, he sort of just threw that out the window. He just said, we're going to run a line and I'm just going to throw punches or kicks or whatever. You guys got to work through it. And I'm tell you, the fear level all of a sudden escalated in everybody's mind because you got whacked.
What's coming?
You know, it happened. It's, you know, and I guess that was a really good training session because it made you realize that your opponent, unless you can read his mind or you have enough training, you can read his movement. There's only so many things he's going to possibly do. But then again, if there's other people hiding in the shadows, that's coming at you too. Do you ever work on that, Todd, where you just don't even work on a calling of a?
Yeah, we have a exercise and training exercise that we call monkey in the middle. I'm sure everybody's done it. You put the one guy in the middle and you have 4, 5, 6 students surrounding, walking around in a circle, and they randomly attack with whatever. At half, 3/4 speed.
Yeah,
Never
Frank
full
used to call
speed.
that bull in the ring of some variation.
But yeah, there's 1,000
Ring of Fire we used to call. Yeah, names for
go.
everything. It's good though. I like it. Yeah.
It's a great exercise. And the thing that I like about that, as opposed to the one in front of you, is that it really starts to make you aware of your environment and all of the people around you, not just the one guy that you think is throwing a punch, kick, or grab, or choke, or whatever.
It also works your vision instead of just your straight ahead vision. It also works your peripheral because sometimes you have these off angle guys. And sometimes there'll be a guy come from your right, and the next guy is going to be the direct guy coming directly from your left. So you got to get back to center. You got to keep your eyes moving, which is more like a street situation versus the lower level technique line where everything's straight ahead of you and you know exactly what's coming at you.
And you learn, just like in the 2-man techniques, you learn how to monitor with your periphery in addition to your direct line of sight.
I want to go to Marty for a second. Marty.
Yes.
Okay, Marty, do you ever do that in Mr. Andersano's classes with weapons?
Well, we do it all the time. We call it numerato, and it's the same philosophy. But in that case, you got kicks, punches, knives, sticks. You got all kinds of stuff coming at you, so you better be aware. And it's good training, but you'll do it. We call it the learning triangle, which, no different than Dennis was talking earlier, about the beginners, intermediates, advanced. We call it the learning triangle. The first round would be cooperative, and that's when you're going to learn the techniques and you're going to walk through them with your partner until you get an understanding of how to apply them. Then you go into the competitive level, and that one you could raise up a little bit with your partner and add a little bit more pressure to test your technique and not just be a one and done dummy. I mean, you'll want to throw something back at them to force one of the biggest ingredients of technique we use is altering. And like Todd was talking earlier when he said that, when you're looking at it, position recognition. I mean, that's the key. I mean, you got to know what's coming. You got to be able to read it. And then the third level of the triangle is combative. And then you go to the level that you both agree upon, no matter how high or where you want it to go, but it's agreed upon when you get in there. So yes, and answer your question. And that's some of the thoughts that we have.
Lee, I want to go to Lee. Okay. And Lee, my question is simple. Do we really have a uniform definition or understanding of what we're trying to talk about here with basic the master keys? Are we just floundering here? It seems like I see a lot of pushback. You know, well, the big thing I will say, I want to set up because I know you're going to come back with a great answer. I posted this up on Facebook, on social, because I just want to stimulate some discussion. The purpose of this channel is simply to hopefully educate people or at least stimulate somebody enough to look into it. Pick up those books from 30, 40 years ago, and then sit down and ask Todd Durgan or Dennis Conatser or Marty Zaninovich or you to help define it. So how do you deal with this? I mean, can you give us something here?
I like to go back to a real basic principle, which is keep it simple.
Amen.
And I think what's been missing, I believe what's been missing from my experience in traveling and going from school to school is the old school training methodology, which was person threw a right and say, if you're going to do 5 swords, you do it on the inside of the right. Now he throws a left. Can I do that same technique on the outside? And if I do I have to change it? It's a discovery process. It's a formalized method where you take the student and say, you work it for a straight right, you work for a roundhouse, you work for an uppercut, you work it outside of the left, you work it for a kick, and then you start to see what it works for, how, and what it doesn't work for. And you're able to get the coordination on both sides and so on. So if you find something that it works inside and outside, it's a master key. And I think that the student gets it. This term is just a way for the student to get the idea that there are sequences or there are single moves that work for more than one thing, because you don't want them to think it only works for this. It's got to work for multiple things for all these reasons that all the instructors this evening have talked about. Street situations, training, and so on.
Do you find yourself teaching the student the beginning of one technique and ending with a different technique and trying to explain to them why that works?
Yes.
Because I hate to say it, a lot of people just think round peg, square hole. Got to be that, got to do all 7 moves. And if you don't do all 7 moves, you haven't done it right.
Right. You know, when Mr. Parker came to my school in Chicago many, many years ago, it was one of the first times the first time he sat on one of our black belt exams. And we were in transition. We've been doing another offshoot Kenpo and we're transitioning over to the Parker system. And he said, yeah, they're not getting through the entire technique, but they sure blend with the situation really well. And I said, well, that's what they were taught to do. And he said, you're kind of penalizing them for not being able to do the entire technique, but they are changing up and doing something effective. And he agreed with me. But he also said they have to know the techniques and those sequences because of his idea of, that's where he had certain movements and sequences that live. That's where you find that.
How do you feel about that, Todd, with the PKI? I mean, you're the founder of the PKI. What are your thoughts?
So with that, so I put some judo endings, some jiu-jitsu endings, some Kali Eskrima combatives in there, so that students can see those positions and recognize those positions and be more flexible with regard to the direction that they go based on the direction they need to go, not the direction that they've been trained to go. And I think that's probably the most important part, is that, what do you need to do, not what have you been trained to do.
Yeah, but do you keep them honest, like Lee was saying?
Absolutely,
Mr. Parker.
because yes, I just had a kid go to Greenbelt Saturday, and he was asked to do one of the attributes for sleeper, in fact, and what Kenpo calls sleeper. And so he went into it, did it a couple times. I left it alone. Last night in class, I said, hey, show me that attribute. And we covered that, and it was not what he was doing. So yeah, we go back and we make sure that this belongs here for the purpose of learning and understanding. But like Mr. Wedlake said, that serves a greater purpose. And the greater purpose is to fully understand, all of those other principles and concepts, and how all of those things tied together. Make no mistake, Mr. Parker's system is genius. Because if you look at, we were talking earlier about family groupings. And one of the things that the family groupings does, and pardon me if I get a little off track here, is it not only teaches you the base technique, but if you look at some of the techniques in the family grouping as they progress in difficulty and in intricacy, is you start to see the introduction to environment. You start to see the introduction to different ranges, to multiple opponents, to all of these different things. And that's built into the system, whereas I've seen many times, and heard many times, people say, whatever. That is the result of ignorance, in my opinion, and people that are not properly trying to understand their art or their system.
You touched on something. What's funny is that you're talking about what Mr. Parker enumerates as the 8 considerations, and infinite insights. And people, again, need to pick up the book. I mean, if you're going to learn something about Ed Parker, pick up a book, look at what he has here. I mean, I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with Dennis about those damn things. He always brings them up, but they have such relevance, exactly what you were saying there. So let's right now, this is very, it can go anywhere, this conversation. I'm going to, with one more moment, let's end it with, because I know that Marty's going to be leaving us soon, and we're going to conclude this for now. This is just an introduction into this, because I think it will help demystify this a little more, because it's the martial science that we're really focusing on, not just going out there and using a big term, but not understanding it. Is that a common, would you all agree with me that for the most part, everybody just throws out these big words, and if you ask them to explain it, I don't think they can. At least majority of them. Maybe
it's like in the movie The Lion King, when Whoopi Goldberg's character says Mufasa, and all the other ones go, ooh, do it again, Mufasa, ooh, and they, it's, I think some of these things start off as somebody learned about something, and now it's really impressive in their mind, and feeds some primal need they have, and then it just gets blown out of proportion. And then there's other people on the other side of the fence that don't want to have anything to do with it, because it's minimal in their eyes.
Marty, your final thoughts?
I like what Mr. Durgan said about Mufasa. It's exactly right. It's that term of, wow, that's got to be the do-all be-all. I believe in what was stated earlier, I think it was Mr. Wedlake, keep it simple. If we keep it simple, we keep exploring, we keep an open mind, I believe that you can do nothing but better yourself. And I think the more you can study and the more you can get around different people, it's going to enhance your own self-expression, in your art when you're doing it. And you'll have a better understanding how to utilize that art to the fullest extent of it. And that's a lifelong, in fact, a couple of lifelong endeavors on that. But I keep an open mind, study, learn, keep asking questions, and you can do nothing but grow. If you improve yourself 1% a day by trying something new, at the end of the year, you're already 365% better than you were when you started. So I'm a firm believer in that.
Lee, final thoughts?
Paul, you're doing what people should do, which is, I'm not sure I got it, I better ask somebody. And that's the thing. This is what instructors are supposed to do. So somebody asks them a question and go, I'm not really sure, but I know where to find the answer.
Yes.
Or several answers in this case. So I want to thank you for doing this, because we have a lot of these terms and concepts in the system get pretty muddy and need some clarification. But I think there's also enough room in there where somebody say, I like that one. That makes sense to me.
Sure.
And that's one of the reasons why we've got the overlapping and multiple terms in the Parker system.
Dennis, final thoughts?
Well, the system has numerous things that Mr. Parker, ingeniously put together. A good idea would be the two-man attacks. There's not one two-man attack that'll ever work on the street as written. They were not put there for that. They were put there to teach and give the insight into how to possibly do this maneuver and how to maneuver between, say, two people, maybe three. Okay. And so that being said, that carries over to all the single techniques as well. They may not work. You have to be able to create your own technique, which has to do, which I'm sure Marty will agree with me, depending on his background, because we both had similar backgrounds with the same people, and it's fundamental security. You have to have the base. The fundamentals have to be there. And if they are there, and then you learn how to go through these things, and you got a mind, then Mr. Parker wanted everybody to be thinkers. You have to then realize what all of this stuff is for, not just do them to do them. We should be beyond the yellow, orange, purple belt level where you learn a technique and that's all you do. You don't do it on the left side. You don't do this. You don't do that. You got to learn how to be able to put this stuff together so that it'll actually become useful to you to be able to apply to the street, which there's never going to be a perfect scenario on the street. We just have a lot of examples of possible things you could do. And then from there, you have to make maneuvers work for you and different strikes work for you. And you've got a plethora of techniques and basics, if taught properly, with a proper, strong, fundamental foundation, and you'll be able to survive.
I'm going to conclude this with this thought. If you want the right answer, you got to ask me the right question. And that is a quote from Ed Parker. I'm grateful. Thank you, gentlemen. I really appreciate your input on this. Thank you, Marty. You know, I know
Thank you
you're
very
busy,
much, Paul,
and
for
it's
having me
really
on.
great to have you in here. Lee, thank you so much. It's always good to see you. I really appreciate your input. Dennis, thank you for giving us some background on and the responses. And it's, you know, it invigorates our listener. And finally, Todd, again, thank you. You always come in with a real analytical response, and it's good to hear that. I just hope that our listeners here will do what we have said here. If you want to learn to play golf, you got to stick it in the ground, pal. You got to take out turf to get it, dig it out. And that means spending time on the old driving range. Well, if you want to learn these things, you need to spend some time on the mat with qualified instructors like you gentlemen, and you better ask some questions. I always saw that problem whenever Mr. Parker would do a seminar, and I know you gentlemen know better than me, but every time these senior belts I would see there, they just failed to ask the question, and I don't know why. So today we're asking questions, and I'm very, very happy that you guys could all participate. Thank you so much. On behalf of the Kenpo Karate Hall of Fame Educational Video Series, thank you again, Marty Zaninovich, Lee Wedlake, Dennis Conatser, and Mr. Todd Durgan. Salute.
Thanks.
Salute.